Hi. What I'd like for us to talk about right now is how to create music like a music theorist. You say, what? Create music like a music theorist? Music theorists don't create music. You're right. It's the composers who create music, and the theorists come along later and explain why it is that that song worked and another song didn't. So we're going to come at the act of creating music from the perspective of analyzing that music as we go. Theory always follows practice. You do first, and then you learn the underlying principles behind it. Perhaps you're familiar with the Suzuki method of playing violin or playing an instrument. What you do is you explore the instrument and you learn to make music before you ever learn to read notes, and you become a musician first. Then you learn the grammar. It's like the way that we learn to speak. Most of us learned to talk long before we learned to read or write. But historically, we've often taught foreign languages backwards. We started with the grammar, we started with the letters, and then started to build words from there, rather than following the natural pattern. Well, we've done the same thing with music theory. We've tended to start from the grammar perspective instead of the language perspective. Let me describe it a few more ways. Music is like abstract language. It's hard to know what the meaning is. Theory comes along and explains the meaning. Music tells a story, but without words. Theory then speculates on the meaning, process we call semiotics. Music is a game, but without rules. Theory figures out the rules. How do we, for example, know the rules of 18th century counterpoint? It's not because Bach wrote down the rules. Bach wrote the counterpoint, and the rules came afterwards as we studied dozens of his pieces and said, this is what he tends to do. He made the rules by being creative. There's another example, Sonata Allegro form wasn't called that until hundreds of sonatas and symphonies had been written, and the first movement always seemed to follow some variation of this form. None of them necessarily followed exactly the form, but by looking at all of the exceptions to it, we find the rule. Today, we write songs in song form, and we can instinctively understand that's a verse, and that's a chorus, and that's a bridge. So the last thing that music theory instruction should do is to stifle creativity. What we ought to do is be creative and then explain what we did. Let theory inform our creativity so we're not guessing or shooting in the dark, but following or breaking the rules. All right, so enough talking about it. Let's go ahead and try something. I want you to experiment here by creating some music. We start with a note. Now that note that we choose is random. There is no right or wrong. There is no particular mood that's being set. We're just picking a pitch. Let's just say G. I'm going to pick a G. Now from there, I need to decide what it is that I want to communicate. Do I want this to be happy or sad? Do I want it to go up or go down? Do I want it to go fast or go slow? Do I want to repeat the same pitch? Each of these now is a moral choice based on what it is that I'm wanting to communicate. I can slow down time by tempo. I can freeze time by repeating. Music works in dream time, not in clock time, I guess you could say. If I make the second note higher, it causes that second note to be more emphasized. That's because in most cultures, music works like speech patterns, and when we go up, that's a more accented syllable. And so the speed and the intensity, they tell the listener very different messages. So I've chosen a first pitch, and I've decided to make that a quarter note. Now we'll add a third pitch. Bum, bum, bum. Now that's our first gesture. We've already said a lot. We've set the tone, we've begun our story, we know the first character, you might say. We're able to say a lot with just 3 notes. Now, what do you want to do with that gesture? Just as with our first single pitch, you could repeat the gesture, or you can what we call sequence the gesture, which is use the same kind of gesture, move it up or down in pitch, or we can move on to new material. So I have this first little gesture, ba, da, da. If I were going to sequence it, maybe I go, ah, ba, ba. How's that? Yeah. Or ba-da-da, ba-da-da. Slightly different rhythm, but the same pitches. You make your choice. What are you going to do with your second gesture now? So repeat, sequence, or move on and change. Try each of those three choices and see what you like with the little tune that you're making up here. Now I want you to actually do this. I want you to try it. So pick a first pitch, pick a second pitch, pick a third pitch, choose a rhythm for them, and now you're going to create something out of this. All right, now after that first gesture, we do a second gesture. That's kind of our first phrase. That phrase might feel complete to you, but it's certainly not the whole song, right? So now we're going to add a second phrase. And again, either you repeat the first phrase and do it a second time. Ba-da-da-da-da-da. Ba-da-da, ba-da-da. Maybe change it a little bit. Or ba-da-da, 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 ba-da-da. Or ba-da-da, 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 ba-da-da. All right. So, now you choose. Which do you like best? Now I've got a first phrase and a second phrase. You might say I have a period now. Again, the period might feel complete to you, might have come to a final cadence of some sort, but it's not a complete song yet. You haven't written a song, you've just written the first period of the music. So if music is a language, what have you said so far? Eventually, most songs in the Western world that we know tell this story. We started at home, we developed some characters, we went away from home, and we came back home again. Home, away, home. That's the story of music. So we establish the setting and the characters, we unfold a plot, there's a twist to the plot, and all seems to be at its worst, and there's resolution and all is well. At least that's true if your story is a comedy. If your story is a tragedy, then it doesn't end so very well and so happily. So for you, what you want to do now is find what pitch is home, what feels finished to you. My little gesture that had ba-da-da. It's a little hard to know quite where home is there. Ba-da-da. But because of the second gesture that I used, ba-da-da, ba, that feels like home to me. So C is, I happen to be in the key of C. Didn't have to be that way, but that feels like home. So that's probably where I want to finish. Ba. So once you know where your home is, then you know what pitches go with it. 1, 3, 5. Those are natural notes that fit. 6, 4, 2. They feel kind of unresolved, and 7 very much feels unresolved, needs to go up to 8. So there is your palette. Then you have this sort of ebb and flow. You breathe out, you breathe in. Sooner or later, you're going to come back home. That's the natural flow of Western music. For the most part, what you want to do in the melody, if it's going to be successful for you, is you're going to follow these rather simple rules. Like you want to go 3, 2, 1, sooner or later. Like that's the overall structure. The other things that you do, a big leap upward or whatever it might be, are what I call risks. You take a risk with your melody. You don't want to take too many risks, because if you do that, then it sounds chaotic. On the other hand, if you don't take any risks, it's just very boring. Now, after you've created this song, you've got your first gesture, you've got your first phrase, you've got your first period, you add another one. That's probably like your verse or your chorus. Now, where does it want to go after that? After you finish that verse or that chorus, it wants to do something else. Maybe it wants to go higher, maybe it wants to go lower. Now you're starting to create the whole song. And then at some point you feel like, I just need a break. I need to go a different direction with this. And maybe you're writing a bridge that only occurs once. And then you put in an intro and an ending, and now you've created a song. And music theory is going back and trying to explain what it was that made that work or not work quite so well, and why it didn't work as well. So that is an introduction to music and music theory. Congratulations, you've created music using theory.